Welcome, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. We have a wonderful panel to share with you. Before we sit down and get started, what I would like to do is welcome everyone to our session. Welcome, Ayanes. Thank you very much for joining us from Coral Gables, and Karl, you as well from Erie. And Carlos, thank you for coming to us from Barranquilla, Colombia, very much. I would like everyone to introduce themselves, and then we will sit down and go ahead and get started with our program.
Hi, my name is Apolinar. I'm with the City of Coral Gables in Miami, Florida, and I am the IT Systems Manager for the IT department.
I'm Karl Sanchack. I'm the President and CEO of the Erie Innovation District, and I represent our public-private partnership.
Hey, my name is Carlos Sarabia. I'm a General Manager of Alumbrado Publico Barranquilla, who handles the public lighting of the City of Barranquilla in Colombia.
Thank you, gentlemen. Please. So as we have thought about smart cities and all of the things it takes to be successful and to be very considerate of how we build our projects and the manner in which we get started, the things that are important to do, can we fail fast, can we move through our projects quickly and very successfully, what we've done is we've asked our panel to come today and speak a little bit about what that takes and what the setup looks like and what sort of things are important. How do you bring people together in a community to actually make the progress that you're trying to make in an accelerated way and create the innovation that we want to create in our cities? And so what I'd like to do first is pass our discussion topic over to you, Ayanes.
Thank you.
If you would please talk to us a little bit about what you've done in Coral Gables and
Sure.
how you accomplished it.
Sure. So for the City of Coral Gables, we started this journey about 2 years ago. And if I can slide forward here.
Yep.
This is kind of how we decided to come up with our roadmap. First thing we decided to do was a process improvement citywide to identify and eliminate waste and also identify some funding since we didn't have money for this. So we needed to cut waste, save some money, and be able to do R&D on smart city technologies. On the right, on the other slide there, what you see is the framework in which we decided to build our smart city. So we started with the bottom layer of building the communications, which gives us flexibility to do more than just one or two smart initiatives. We can build that framework, we have that layer of communication, and now we can use that for whatever we want to do, be it CCTV, smart lighting, public Wi-Fi, what have you. We then moved on to the next level, which is the Internet of Things, which is actually placing those physical devices out in the city, smart sensors, smart lighting, CCTV cameras, some robotics as well. And now we're at the point where we've got this information out, or these hardware out there, and we are collecting all this data. So what do we do with the data is we're building our data platform to make it for our business departments so they can make actionable decisions for the community, and then also make it available to our citizens as well. The key value for us here is making sure that it's improving quality of life, public safety. So if it doesn't fall within those areas, it really won't make sense to us. At the top store there, you see kind of our data marketplace where we put all these different data points in one area and make it available, as I said, to the either internal departments or to the citizens to be able to use as they see fit. And my last slide here, and this is just kind of an idea of what we have so far. That's our Community Intelligence Center where all our CCTV cameras are feeding into. A quick point, if I will, we have a very large carnival called Carnival on the Mile, and it has about 40,000 people. And with the Community Intelligence Center and our CCTVs, there was a lost child, and we were actually able to identify and locate that child within about 15 minutes from the parents notifying us using all these technologies that we did have out there. So it's been a great value for us. And then you can see how we're using it for predictive analysis on crime stats there at the bottom. And it gives our police a smarter way to police rather than just going out blindly on beats like they used to. Now they know they can focus on the key areas that are important and maybe where we see the most potential for crime. The other sections you see there are just quick slides of data that we're already collecting, pedestrian counters. On the next one, you have also vehicle and pedestrian counters along these key areas within the city. In addition, we have waterway sensors, as we do have some canals and waterways in the city. And then our data marketplace and what we call our smart city hub, where we kind of bring all this together. And we're doing all this with not just hardware, but partnerships through various different companies to help us collect all this data, analyze it, provide it, and actually make business decisions based off that information we're seeing. So that was kind of the idea, how we started this, how we approached it, and so far it's been pretty successful for us.
Sounds like it. So Ayanes, some of the things that you've just mentioned here, the finding a lost child, how is it exactly that you use the data or the information from the cameras? Walk us through, how did that turn out and how did you begin?
So we use a software with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that is processing all this video, which can take about 4 hours or more of video and shrink it down to just a few minutes based on characteristics. You say, I just want everybody with a red shirt. So what we did is we had officers out in the field. They're speaking with the parents, getting information on what the child was wearing, what did he look like, what area did they last see him, and that's being fed back into the the Community Intelligence Center. And they're then entering this into the system, into the software, who's then going out and analyzing the last 3 hours of footage. And once it gathers all that data points that we've provided it was able to then sit here and say, oh, well, the child was only about a block away from where the parents was. It was just so crowded, they couldn't see him. So that's the kind of the steps we took to get to that.
That's right. So you're also using data in other ways, as you've shown us here. What are some of the things that your citizens or your stakeholders in various agencies in the city are looking for?
Well, one of the big ones is, if you see that center slide there, which is our pedestrian counters, our city has a lot of different events throughout the year. One of them is we had this thing called Umbrella Sky in our key business area. And our economic development department is able to use this data to generate or recruit new businesses to come by showing the value of these different events. At the start of it, to give you a good example, there was a little bit of pushback from the businesses. It was interrupting services. But with this data, we actually were able to show them that on an average, we went from 3,000 visitors in this area a day to 20,000 people visiting because of this one event, which in terms to them is, well, that's generating business for them and bringing in value for them. So that's one of the ways that our economic development, and they use that for a lot. They're also in that second section there. They can use this with other businesses to show the different areas in the city where we're collecting all these points and say, hey, this is a high traffic area. Also, our city planners, our urban designers, they can use this to kind of build better traffic patterns, design better roadways or how to better move traffic along based off these events or different peaks times of the day. So those are just some of the examples or key points we've had.
That's wonderful. So using data to do urban planning, to manage traffic, to make sure for large community events that there is some public safety backup, all of the different things. But what a great way to take something that is a smart or a connected environment and really use the data to move forward. Thank you, Ayanes.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Very nice. Karl, would you talk to us about what we're doing in Erie?
Sure. Okay, so similar to Ayanes, we come in with an integrated comprehensive platform as well for data management and arrest. But our opening principle, and I like to go right to the end of the book. Let's jump to the end of the story. The end of the story here is how do we generate new jobs in an area that is typically a tier 3 legacy city. In other words, we've had a decline in population, we have challenges in our inner urban core. How do we actually jump up those jobs? And how do we fund doing the types of things we need in a digital infrastructure when, frankly, the city is struggling? That was the question we had to answer, and I'll answer it for you, at least in terms of how we did this. So starting with this, the first thing we did, which is pretty common, I think, for a lot of smart cities, we looked at a public-private partnership. And that meant that the mayor's office, the city council, a number of entities, both large and small, worked together to try and design what we thought were going to be a pilot run-out for smart city services. In this case, we're talking about public access Wi-Fi, we're talking about urban surveillance, and we're also talking about street lighting being converted to LED for smart purposes. All those things I would consider to be bread and butter, but the key was we've got a population, you have to understand this, we have a population that's been on decline. It's at a 40% decline in population. The revenue is not supported by taxes in the city. Of our student body in our public school, 100% of the kids qualify for free lunch. So if you understand what that means they're below the poverty line. All of our kids. Average salary in the areas we're defining this in, average median salary is $10,800 a year. Okay? So coming in, how do we design a digital city when you've got those kind of challenges? And this is where it's important to everybody in this audience. We came up with a new business model. That business model was tied to the private-public partnership with entities like Cisco and others. Essentially what we did was we had 100% private equity fund the rollout of the capitalization with a payout and planned payback for a part of it, not all of it, over 10 years, okay? That's truly unique. So when I talk about things like public access Wi-Fi, and what you're seeing here is not a theoretical map of our city. This is actually what we did. We looked at how do we do public access Wi-Fi to bridge the digital divide in that community I talked about where the kids they don't have access to internet at home. It doesn't matter if the broadband's available, they don't have the access, okay? And the city doesn't have the funds. What you're seeing in those dots, and I don't know how readable they're on the screen up there for you, but every one of those dots represents an access point throughout the city. The blue squares are what we describe as opportunity zones. Hopefully folks here know what an opportunity zone is, but essentially think of them as the most distressed communities in our city. We intentionally are rolling this out into our city, into those opportunity zones, with the goal of turning them around and making them the most desirable tracks in the city, the most effective tracks using 100% private equity. Let me make that even more specific. We worked with a private fiber provider. The fiber provider has committed to 10 years of basic broadband access for a public access Wi-Fi for zero cost to the city and its citizens, zero, for 10 years. So our goal is a 10-year rollout. We're trying to create that baseline network because we believe at the end of the day, this network and the services that will build upon it will actually make a difference for this city. Practical terms, what does it look like? Well, everybody talks about how they use lighting to do cost efficiency. Certainly we're doing that as well. And we're using that as part of our payment model over 10 years. But the reality is our city also has assets and buildings. So while everybody thinks about the vertical assets of the poles and things like that for lighting, I would propose to you that your architecture could be more creative. Your network can involve the buildings that have sometimes not been heavily used or blighted or otherwise throughout your city as access points. So you have an opportunity to create a mixed architecture, still integrate, still provide data services comprehensively to your entire city, and build upon what's actually in place. And that's what you're seeing here. In fact, I would argue that we are designing this for 90% building touch points as opposed to poles. And there's a lot of good reasons for that if you've looked at the costs. We're working with the public utility to deploy this. Okay, so we had to get the public utility on board with a reduced revenue model. Not an easy subject. Part of what we're doing here is we're leveraging the assets of the city, which includes those buildings, in order to do all that networking. So last but not least, in my comments I said I would do jobs. That was my premise, right? It would not just be an architecture for technology, but an architecture for jobs. We're bringing in startups around the globe. So everybody in this room, wherever you came from, doesn't matter to us in Erie. We have a very high new American population. We're actually investing in startups as a lay along with this. So we bring in accelerator startups and invest in them, and part of the goal is they stay in the city. We encourage and incentivize them to do so. So what you're seeing in these pictures is a city where we brought in 16 companies in the past 18 months. Everything I'm talking about here has been done in the last 22. In the past 18 months, we brought in 16 companies from around the globe, and these companies are worth anywhere from $3 million to north of 100. And they're making their home in Erie, and because they believe that there's a digital economy coming. That's it. That's the story for me.
Karl, that's a great story, and thank you. And before we move on, tell us a little bit about, with that focus on economic development and having the companies come in the last 18 months, what does it look like? What types of jobs are those? You know, we talk about the digital economy, but I'm sure it serves a number of different components of the economy. So
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, our first portfolio of companies, our first cohort in 2018, were focused on smart cities. So our premise was we would provide them a single point of entry for the city where you could bring in new services and show how you bring value to a smart city economy. So that, of course, is attractive all by itself. But our core and what's been a challenge for our city is we're a heavy manufacturing city. So our second cohort were companies that were Internet of Things, but they were specifically industrial Internet of Things. So we're showing them how they can be part of our manufacturing community and creating scalar solutions. One concrete example, in interest of time, we have a company that has a solution that helps with wiring for planes and jets and the rest. It's a very simple clamp solution, but it's all plastic. They're coming out of a military question. We have the second, depending on who you ask, first or second largest plastics development industry in Erie in the entire United States, possibly in the world. So we teared them up and said, we're going to be able to take you right to market, 500,000 units a month. Because you can bring your startup here, we can make you part of our community.
That's outstanding. How many jobs came with that?
That particular company is brand new. They're typically about 4 to 5. The bigger company that was north of 100 is starting at 25.
Outstanding.
So there you go.
So economic development already, right. It's very exciting. Thank you very much. Carlos, can we move to you and please tell us a little bit about what you've already accomplished in your city of Barranquilla?
Thank you. Thank you for being here to show what we're doing at Barranquilla. We are in Colombia, located in the coast. We started the transformation process about 12 years ago over the city in satisfying basic needs, and now we are looking at new ways, technological ways to modernize the city. The first thing that we did, we created a public-private partnership with a company to handle all the public lighting. And the first objective of this is we change all the sodium technology to LED. We received the infrastructure in 2017 with a 6% of technology of LED. We now have 90%. The modernization program is at 90% by July of this year. All the numbers that you see there is neighborhoods of the city. We're already almost done. And that is the first step in building a new technology, a smart city, because what we want to do with this smart lighting is to put sensors in the poles, in the lights. We are installing 17,300 sensors in the first phase all over the city. So we can have a management platform so we control these lights and then build a common platform to get additional solution for becoming a smart city. What we have been hearing here about traffic, about environmental, about all the things that we do. We partnership with Cisco. We do that partnership with them. This looking at in the long term, because we know that it's going to be a scalable platform, and we have to start doing these additional services. How we do it? We did a print of the city. We started with the principal street, 241 kilometers of street. We have started with 50 parks. We're going to have 22 CGR routers, so we can connect all these sensors to the router, and then we're going to have a range extender. So the city, in terms of connections, is going to be like that, the map on the right, where we're going to have some strong zones of connection. And maybe since the city has 61,000 lights, we're going to start with only 17,000 sensors. So we're going to start building up about that. And the basic thing is we're already doing it. This is a park where we're installing the sensor already. We're installing 200 sensors in that park, and we have 3,000 more in the process to begin to installing all over the city. What we're looking for with this is principle satisfies the basic needs for the consumption of energy on that each luminary, so we can have a reduction of their energy bills. We can manage the light intensity of this luminary in parks or in streets, so we can have a better securing for the citizens. And then we can have they're going to be all connected. So now, if a light came off, they have to call us, or we have to see it. Now with this, we're going to have it right away in a platform, so we can react strongly. But this is like the first step in becoming a smart city. What we want to do next is integrate all these citizens services with cameras, with environmentals, alarms, and all that, and traffic measure, and all the features that we can add over this sensor and over this network that we're building. So when we got the invitation, we are glad, and we've been hearing all this, my colleagues here. And for us as a city, satisfies that we are doing all the things that we should be doing. We have a long-term strategy. We are building our architecture foundation. We're going to build a secure digital network with a data platform with the first objective to start building over the lights, and then we can connect with all the people. And I was hearing yesterday the mayor of Atlanta saying, how do you communicate all this with the people, the citizens? And I want to show you a small video that we did in that sense. That's more likely what we're doing right now. And we're happy to be here and hearing from our experience of our city to see how we can improve our quality of the people of Barranquilla.
So thank you. And let's pause here for a minute, because one of the things that you clearly know so well, and I would say our other panelists do also, is how do you share the excitement of this? How do you get the word out? What are you doing to communicate to the community and also with your elected and appointed officials? The video is a fabulous touch. What else are you doing?
We are doing we're integrating the citizens since we are doing a lot of parks. And for the building, we are recuperating 120 parks in the city. So, and the recuperation of these parks is with the proper communities, with the design. So we're introducing all these concepts of the smart lighting, of in the future cameras, so people feel secure, people ask a lot of questions, they are very motivated and happy with what we're doing. And so we're trying to figure out how to connect with the people, with the communities, so they can also bring us feedback about what we need in that sense, and what the necessity of each community has, because they are all different in all the city.
Sure, well, and I think that's a big part of how do we make this more valuable from a citizen standpoint. What kind of feedback? When we launched the smart lighting, because this is the first phase, we had a lot of comments from their social media because of the mayor and the city and ourselves and as a company. But everybody was like real happy because they've been seeing the change in the city. We have the old lights, the sodium lights. Now we have the bright lights, the LEDs. So that's the first impression that we made. And then now on top of that, we are getting smart lighting. So people are very happy and very anxious to see what we can do in terms of lighting, and then of the other services that we're going to expect to provide. Which is great, and I know that on one of your slides you talked about securing the platform and making sure that it's available in a differentiated way as you move to the future and add more services to it. So when you're working with your mayor and you're working with your other officials, what sort of things are they looking for?
They're looking, principal security, as mentioned of Jonah, yeah. And then we have like 350 cameras in the whole city. We want to start growing that, and this is going to help a lot in that sense. And then we have mobility. It's a problem in all cities. So with the measurement of traffic and all that, I think we can improve the quality of life of the citizens. That's the major goal is that.
That's outstanding. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's come back to you, Karl, for a minute. I know much of what you were focused on is the economic development component, but there is so much of this similarity here. What else are you looking at from securing the community or safety aspect or making sure that you're getting feedback as well?
Right, so this is actually an interesting intersection. So I mentioned that our first cohort of startups were smart city oriented. One of them is an entity that actually allows transparency in e-government. So they provide a really interesting model where it's really simple to design civil services for your community, adopt it, and there's no cost to the adoption and use of the services. The only time there's any sort of cost is if you do some sort of financial transaction, say a license or something like that. So specific to your question, one of the things that we did was we integrated them into the mayor's municipality and completely changed their website and their traffic and create a whole section for feedback from the community to try and get a sense of do they like the services we're doing, do they like the responsiveness of the services, et cetera, et cetera. From a security point of view, because similar to the gentleman around me and our colleagues, we're also building to a cloud platform. So the presumptive is we're going to be able to manage the services over time in a very smart way. One other thing I'd like to mention, because it goes back to the economic development aspect, and I think there's a larger question. And I would pose that this question is true for hopefully everybody in this room, at least from the US. I mentioned the opportunity zone aspect of what we're doing here in Erie, Pennsylvania, which was focusing on those distressed communities. My position, at least I think, as we go forward, is that the US government should be looking at how can the federal government provide a different approach to investing in the digital infrastructure. And there's a lot of conversation about infrastructure broadly within the US, but I would say specifically digital infrastructure improvement like smart cities could be a focus. It could start in these communities because in these opportunity zones, they represent about 25% of the actual physical footprint in the United States. There would be a way to then lift the communities, do some things. Practically speaking, just simply identifying, prioritizing federal grants to those communities, providing an easier matching structure instead of a one-for-one could make for a very interesting way to help private equity, help the cities actually build out this capacity.
That's right, I agree. And just for our audience who might know what may not know what an opportunity zone is, can you just comment on that for a minute, please?
Yeah, essentially in 2017 there was a tax law change that allows you to defer capital gains as long as you invest those capital gains into one of these designated opportunity zones in a qualified project. So that typically falls into one of two categories, either land development, urban development, or what's been designated as business projects, which you can translate to as startups. For Erie, we're doing both. We're doing land development projects, which I'd say is typical. What's atypical was we announced 2 weeks ago that we have a $10 million fund out of $60 million, $10 million fund that's going to be going into startups. And when I talked about jobs, because the tax law is based on these zones, people have to place their personnel and payroll in those zones. So all 10 million, we expect at least half or more of their staffs will be resident in Erie. So that's an attraction and retention solution. And again, ties in nicely.
It ties in very nicely. And as you've done a nice job of explaining, those opportunity zones are ready to have new companies there and new people living in those areas because of what you've been able to accomplish.
Right, it's attractive.
That's right. Public-private partnerships. We've heard quite a bit of mention of that up here today. Did you do anything in Coral Gables with a public-private partnership to get going?
At the moment, we haven't. It is something that we're looking into exploring further. We've still kind of early in our deployment in this, so we do have some partnerships with the different vendors and companies out there, but nothing that is formal out there yet. We're still seeing how to best make that work for us within the city.
That's right. So let's talk about one thing that you didn't expect to find when you began these projects.
Ooh, there's a lot, I guess. The different challenges in getting, breaking silos. Because a lot of times, within, at least in the city, everybody kind of wants to do their own thing. The utilities wants to do their own. The IT, which is, they just want to do all this cool new technology stuff. And it's trying to get everybody, hey, we're all on the same page. We're all trying to do the same thing, provide the same services. Let's make it, let's do it together rather than you do your own thing. So that was a little bit of I guess, a shock for me personally, where I was like, well, why the holdback and but through those process improvements, through getting everybody together and, making everybody, showing them the vision of where we wanted to get to, I think we've gone pretty far in breaking those and bringing everybody together and seeing that this is, we're not departments, we're the city, and we're providing this for our citizens, for safety, for quality of life, and I think we've done well so far with that.
I would agree. And as you talked to us a little bit right when you kicked us off, you are really focusing on using data differently. How are you securing it?
So that's a big area right now. So right now we're looking at, our first foray into it is making sure that this data that we're keeping is being done at the what we call the edge. So we're not bringing anything in where a hacker can get in, grab, jump onto a Wi-Fi point and then get into our internal network. Now is when we start looking at how we secure that actual data that we're capturing. And one of the key things we wanted to make sure is that we're not keeping any information that can be exposed. So what we're sending to our cloud providers, if you will, is just numbers. So it really, to us, it doesn't really make a difference. We're making that public to you anyways. So we're looking at other areas, though, on how to even secure those even more, doing what a hot buzzword now, blockchain, where it fits, and making sure that providers and partners that we do work with are following the same security best practices and that align with us in the city. So that's kind of where we are right now.
There's a lot to do, I know. All right, everyone. What I'd like to do is just do a quick wrap up where we've heard today about data and how much it can really help us move forward as we're creating smart cities, smart communities, smart regions, what the impact really is from an economic development standpoint and what it can be, and certainly how you take a major city and really move it forward quickly from getting the lighting and getting the sensor activity correct. And would you please help me thank our panel today for their contribution. There may be some questions that you have, and our panel has agreed to go out into the cafe area afterwards. I know that we're back to back with the sessions today. So if you have some things you'd like to ask our panel with Ayanes, thank you. Karl, thank you very much. And Carlos, thank you very much.
Thank you.